morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whenever you're listening to this. It's wonderful to have you with us again. This week, me, Bry and Phil are again exploring the temple, and this time we get to the entrance of the Holy of Holies. So here is episode 5 of our temple series, Curtains, Encounter and Eden.
One of the things we've been looking at is the journey into the presence of God, and kind of bearing in mind that really the whole purpose of mankind being created was to have intimacy with God the Father and God the Son and God the Holy Spirit, the Godhead, which is one. They are all the same. You know, if you've seen Jesus, you've seen the Father. They're all kind of the same together. And we've been looking at that journey through, and of course we kind of went in through the way, we passed through the truth, and we're now standing at the final veil, which was kind of a big thick veil, and it was the one that when Jesus died was split in two from top to bottom to make the way open. But in the tabernacle days and in the temple days, that veil was very much in place, and just before it was this altar of incense. And I've always loved the symbolism of this, because incense really speaks of worship. I think it speaks of worship and prayer, but it speaks of that communion with God. It speaks of that kind of that flow of revelation and prayer and intercession and worship and kind of all of those different things of how we kind of go together with God. And that is literally just before the doorway into the Holy of Holies, where, of course, the Ark of the Covenant was, and I'm sure we'll get onto that in a minute, where the presence of God hovered above the top of the Ark. And the altar of incense, for me, really speaks of worship. And, you know, we've entered his gates with thanksgiving, his courts with praise, and then we're getting to this place where we're getting to that third veil, and we're about to go in and have like face-to-face contact with God. And the only way in is through the altar of incense. And if you can imagine, so in those days, only one person could go through that veil. And that was the high priest, the appointed high priest for that year. He had to have had all the blood sacrifices. He had to be ceremonially prepared. He had to be cleaned. And in a way that what we've talked about, that journey through the outer court, the inner court, the most holy place, the Holy of Holies, speaks of that journey of sanctification, you know, where we offer the blood sacrifice at the door, we're washed in the Word, we're washed in the Holy Spirit, we're all of that, and we come into the holy place. And, you know, that is the process the high priest would have had to go through. He would have had to wear the right clothes, they would have had to be cleaned, he had to have the blood sacrifice. They went through various ceremonial things of applying the blood, applying the oil, and then he would be able to be prepared for the Day of Atonement, where he would go through and kind of offer this blood on behalf of the whole nation of Israel. But even then, it was a bit risky. They used to tie something round his foot, like a rope, which in case something went horribly wrong and he'd forgotten to confess something, they could sort of drag him out and it wouldn't leave the place too cluttered in there. And then the next appointed priest would have to come. It was a risky thing. They did not come into the presence of God lightly, you know. It was a very serious thing. But, you know, going in, if you can imagine the high priest coming up to that final veil, and, you know, and there's a shaking, there's a kind of a reverential fear, because they understand the holiness of God, you know, what's going to happen. But as he opens that veil, as he pulls that veil apart, all of the incense, all of that was rising up, that was burning, the kind of smoke from the incense altar kind of wafts in ahead of him. And the place is kind of filled. It's sort of like a vacuum, and it sucks that incense into the Holy of Holies ahead of him. And I think this is such a brilliant picture of how we are designed to, yes, enter his gates with thanksgiving, his courts with praise. Some of that's like quite intentional and and quite kind of pulling ourselves into shape and all of that sort of stuff. But then there is this worship, and it speaks of intimacy. It speaks of just laying everything down. It speaks of risking your life. It speaks of just the last thing. And as you open that veil and go through into the Holy of Holies, all of that fragrant sacrifice gets wafted in ahead of you and kind of prepares you for going in. And then, of course, I think when you're in there, you're kind of faced with God face to face. And it goes beyond thanksgiving and praise. And even worship, I think it is worship, of course, but I think it's the place where words are no longer sufficient, because you are face to face with the living God, the holy God, his glorious presence, which is hovering over the Ark of the Covenant. And, there it becomes literally just a response to what you see. And I don't think it's something you can whip up. I don't think it's something that you can do to make yourself kind of go into that place. It's a response to being in that place. And, that's where the journey becomes complete. But I love this picture of the altar of incense, the worship. That's where we get into that intimate place where we begin to tell him how much we love him, how much we care for him, how important he is for our lives. It's very intimate. It's not a corporate thing. It is something that comes from inside you to him.
I think in these COVID times, I've never been so aware, I don't know about you, but when you're walking in the street and you can smell someone's perfume, because it makes you think, gosh, if I can smell their perfume or what they're vaping or
I've
whatever.
had exactly the same thought.
Surely their breath must be getting on me and the germs too. But I think that's why this whole process into the temple is kind of important, because if you're walking in, if you try and jump straight to the holy place, you're going to be bringing aromas with you, but it's going to be the aromas of the outside world, isn't it? Everyone, when we walk up to people, everyone carries their own kind of aroma with them. And it's just the journey through the temple. There's so many steps, not because God wants to make it hard for us or something, but it's just to give us as many opportunities as possible to just let go of those other things, let go of that outside stuff. Remember that we're somewhere special. Remember that this is a holy moment, and we take on that incense of the praise and worship. We wash away the things from before, and so that when we come, that's the kind of aroma that goes ahead of us. And it's just an intriguing little thing that probably every single person, when they approach God, must have a slightly unique blend. I like this type of worship and I like to pray like this, and that's the aroma that goes ahead of me. And how weird to think that God recognizes that, there's a waft, and when someone, has really strong perfume and you don't even have to see them, you just oh, here they come.
Yeah, Phil, we've been
I hope she's not talking about me. But, anyway.
No. I love what you were saying before as well, Phil, about how only we can choose to make that step into that holy place. I'm the only one who can wash myself.
Yeah.
No one else can do that for me.
Yeah.
I can't. No one else can kind of make me ready. Other people can create a space where I can move into those things, where I can do that. Like here, we can make a space here. But it comes down to the fact that I want to go and have this intimate moment with God.
Yeah.
You can't do it as much,
Ray Hughes talks about it in a different image, but I think it's a really good one of what is the role of praise and worship bands? Are they trying to create this holy place for everyone? We've got to make it happen, get everyone into worship, and no band can do that, can they? People have to choose to step into it. But he says, as a worship team, as worship leaders, when you choose to stick on a CD or whatever it is you're doing, he says it's we fill the place with water so that people can choose to come and step in and walk on the water. And that's where the miraculous things happen. But you can't make anyone walk on water. That's a miracle moment where someone steps out of the boat for themselves. But what we're doing when we're worshipping is we're trying to create that, fill the space with water, ready for people to recreate the space, like you say. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the other thing that's sort of quite interesting is when Jesus died and the veil was split in two, that was the veil into the Holy of Holies. So the way is open for us to go into that place. And but actually there was another veil, the previous veil, which was the veil into the holy place, and that veil is still in place. And I think that speaks of the veil of our flesh. It's like the veil that separated God from man has gone, but there is another veil, the veil of our flesh, which we have to push through. And to get through into that place, quite often it costs, doesn't it? There's a price to be paid, and that's why I think in this whole time that we've been in, that it's actually been quite difficult to get to that place, because we get into a certain way of operating, and you can put stuff on from YouTube and join in, but it's actually a real active choice to participate rather than just watch. Even these times this morning, we're here and we can offer our sacrifice of praise, our sacrifice of worship and all of that stuff, but kind of people watching, it actually becomes a very active choice to join in, and it's challenging. I find it challenging, and I think in some way, what does it say in Romans? This is your act of spiritual worship or whatever, that lives laid down. There is a price to be paid in order to get in and begin to enter into it. And it's the one thing that I've really missed over this year, is because quite often when we do corporate worship, it provided the entry point for me. I would then kind of come along, you'd perhaps not feel like it, but you'd join in, you'd sing, and then suddenly you kind of find yourself a little bit further in, but then you make that choice. You make that personal choice to go one-to-one with him, and that's when those encounters
It's like
happen.
there's this whole kind of melee and movement of people ushering us through the door, through the courts, right up to the veil, and you're like, oh, here I am, I guess I'll go through.
That's right. Good.
That's good. Yeah, well, I've been looking a bit at the veil for this morning. Kind of, we're still not quite into the Holy of Holies, are we? We're constantly hovering just outside.
One more week.
Come on.
Anyway, so the veil, this thing was like the dimensions of this curtain amazed me, because I think it was about 4 inches thick, it says in some places, that's a serious curtain. That's you're not getting through that easily. But it talks about how on the veil were embroidered these cherubim, these angelic. I mean, nowadays we think of cherubim as those small,
cute little babies with bare bums.
Yeah, and like little arrows with
Cupid.
hearts on.
It was not that though, was it?
It was not that.
No.
Apparently, they're nothing like that.
No.
But so here they are. So they're on each side. There are 2 cherubim, and you begin to think, okay, so where have cherubim been before? And you begin to think back to the garden in Eden, okay? So you go back and you go through the story in Genesis 3 where everything goes a little bit wrong.
I feel like we need an Eden buzzer. Like you guys at home, you need an Eden, like as soon as we mention something about Eden, it's like, here we come.
This is it. Here we go. And when they were... God said, sorry, you can't be in the garden anymore. And they go out of the east gate. He stands 2 cherubim at the gate, and there's also a flaming sword that turns around at the gate so that they could not come back in and take of the tree of life. And so you begin to think, well, this is a bit strange. Does that have something to do with... And you begin to look into Eden and the temple, and you begin to find all of these similarities, these things that kind of come together that show, like, Eden was the first temple. This place was the first temple. So you have the cherubim. It talks in Genesis about how the rivers flowed from Eden down, which means it must have been on some kind of high place. And in the ancient world, temples would always be put on high places because it was...
Yeah, Eden was a mountain garden,
God.
wasn't it? It was
So
on God's holy mountain.
And like Phil said, you're closer to God. You're kind of like closer to the heavens, all that kind of stuff. What else have we got here? God will come and kind of hang out in the garden. He would walk in the garden with Adam and Eve, and here we are about to enter the Holy of Holies, which is the very dwelling place of God, who went with them and all that kind of stuff. Adam is told he's got to watch over the garden, and so we have this priestly thing, you know, the same word that is for working the garden, for kind of tending the garden and watching over the garden, is the same word that God says the priests have to work in the temple and serve the people. So anyway, and there's a whole load more. Otherwise, we would just talk about this for the next hour. But I think it's fascinating that this is the Garden of Eden, the very first place where you know that God creates, is created as a temple where there is no separation. There is no separation. And then you come back to what Jesus did, and you know, he's kind of like, let's get rid of the cherubim, let's get rid of all that stuff, and everybody is now welcome to come back. It's straight into the garden. There's nothing in the way anymore. And so we are already able to walk straight back to Eden, straight back to that first place.
I remember those cherubim stood right next to the two pillars, the two trees. Yeah. It's taking us back, like that melee of people flooding us back, till we find ourselves face to face with the two trees again. We're in the garden with all this fruit and stuff around us. And it's like the whole host of heaven, the cherubim are just a kind of representative of that, aren't they? Of all the spiritual beings of heaven, standing on the edge of this heavenly place, saying, who is worthy? Who can make the right choice? Who can come back to the two trees and do this right and put it all back how it was supposed to be? Standing guard, waiting for someone to kind of be able to do that and pointing us again to Jesus. And it's like the pivotal question hanging in heaven, like who can enter in? Will someone make a way again? It's a really powerful point, isn't it, with the cherubim and the trees? I love it.
Come on. It's good. So it's always been, the whole thing is a temple, and it has always been designed to be a temple. Everything around us, wherever you are, is a place where you can meet with God, and you know, and Jesus has made that way. You know, going back to Jesus again, there is no separation now. There is nothing. You can't go anywhere where you're going to get away from God. You can't hide. You can't run. It's like wherever I go, He is there. I cannot. He is so for me and so wanting relationship and connection and intimacy with me that he would do whatever to get that. And so that, man,
it's super cool.
It's really good, isn't it, when you realize that from the beginning of creation, God intended to have close intimacy with mankind. And all of the stories through the Bible of failures and successes and kind of all sorts of things going on, everything is trying to get us back into that place of intimacy, walking in the cool of the day with God the Almighty, you know, and providing a way. And all through the Old Covenant, it was kind of quite legalistic and everything, but in the New Covenant, you know, Jesus has fulfilled all of those requirements. But that's what He wants. He wants us to get into the Holy of Holies and speak to Him face to face, as a man speaks to his friend, as it talks about in Exodus 33, when Moses used to meet with God in the tent of meeting, which was pitched outside the camp, and he would go daily and speak to Him face to face, as a man speaks to his friend. You know, that was always the intention for every single one of us. And now, if we can get it into our system that actually Jesus has made a way for that to happen, for us to meet with Him face to face, we just have to choose to walk through the doors. We just have to choose to kind of align ourselves with the whole kind of thing that enables us to get. But He's done it. He's provided everything we need. The full toolkit, everything we need is in the pack. We've just got to open it up and kind of go on in. So.
Yeah.
That's good.
So the temple, we've made it up to the threshold, really, haven't we? We're teetering on the threshold. The whole temple is supposed to be a picture of Eden. Eden's a picture of the temple. They kind of go together. And all of that is about a doorway. The temple is a doorway, the threshold between earth and heaven, the meeting place between God and mankind. And that's where we've kind of led ourselves up to today. We're standing at the threshold, and where the door was shut and none of us could find a way to get that to work. Like God gave every invitation, every come back. And in the end sent Jesus to be the way, didn't He?
we are. That was the penultimate episode of our Temple series. Next week, we will finally be getting to the Holy of Holies, the place we've been waiting to get to. So I do hope you can join us again then, and have a fantastic week. Love you, bye.
you.